All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. Make Do Suburban Fireman Podcast, episode 31. I'm Nick Pepper. That's Sean Duffy. We're your host. And today we are happy to welcome our special guest, Tyler Whitfield, hailing out of Clearwater, Florida. Tyler, welcome to the show, bro.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, boys.
So, Tyler, first of all, I just want to point out, has one of the top 3 mustaches in the fire service. I'm going to get that little disclaimer out there now. It is wonderful, truly glorious. We had Liska on the show, Jason Liska, a couple episodes ago, and he's got also a stellar mustache. So I would put you and Liska definitely in my top 3 of epic mustaches. Trying to think my third one. I don't know, man. It's a toss up. There's a couple really great mustaches out there, but we'll circle back around on that, the third one. But that being said, man, give us a little background on kind of what got you into the fire service, where you're at currently, and kind of what you got on the horizon.
Yeah, so I've been a fireman for coming up on 10 years now. I initially worked for Citrus County. That's actually where I met Duffy. We took driver class up there together. Pretty much just since day one, somebody told me, make sure that any opportunity you get to take a class or better yourself, don't ever pass up an opportunity, no matter what it is. Even if it's not something that, pertains to your current job function or your current interest, take it, put it in the back burner. And if it can come to use, eventually it will. So that's kind of my mindset of the fire service. When I got into it, I was a first generation firefighter. I'd had nobody in my family that was a firefighter before. I was just kind of a little kid with a dream, and became a reality. So, like I said, I went to fire school in Pinellas County where I work. I always wanted to be at Clearwater. A lot of the instructors that really were like a mentor to me, or, that I looked up to, that I thought were pretty badass firemen, all came from Clearwater. So I was a terrible interviewer. I learned that right off the bat. So I ended up having to get some street cred and some experience under my belt before I could really take that jump and go to Clearwater. Been there for a little over 6 years now. I just made lieutenant just as of like the last month. It's been good so far. I'm unassigned right now. I was assigned to Engine 51 for about 5.5 years. It's in the ghetto of Clearwater. So got a lot of good work, a lot of good times there. Now, like I said, I'm unassigned. I'm on a new shift, working with new people. That's right where I'm at now. I'm on the tech rescue team for Pinellas County. I just became an instructor for them, teaching all the different disciplines for the new guys and our monthly trainings and bi-monthly trainings. I'm Cigar City Fools president, heavily involved in the Fools and the training there. And we just started the Grab Factory, which is a search class we put on in some different conferences around, and we're excited to see where it takes us. That's a little bit about me.
Very nice. Yeah. So Florida boy. Most everybody that's listening to the show for any length of time knows that kind of that's where Sean and I spent some time down there. That's how we all met. But I do want to point out the fact that you kind of hit the ground running hard, man. Like you really got after it, and the training thing kind of became a way of life for you, which is pretty awesome for a new fireman coming in the door to kind of get involved right out the gate that heavily. And also, I want to point out the fact that you're being passed around like a cheap whore around the fire department right now. Not that that's anything new to you, but
No.
at this point in your career, it's. I'd like to say that when you're newly promoted, man, they just kind of plugging holes until they figure out a place where you fit. Right? That's how it goes, right? You're just kind of filling in the gaps, and eventually you land your own company in your own house again, right?
Yep.
At least that's how it was for most of my career. That seems like guys, when they first get promoted, end up in a lot of departments kind of being on the move a lot, which is good. You get a lot of experience getting into different companies, different personnel, but also challenging because it's hard to get a routine when you're always in a different firehouse every other station or every other shift.
Yeah. So luckily our department, a little bit about our department and kind of how we operate. So we have 8 stations. We do have, like I said, special ops with the technical rescue team and stuff like that. So luckily for me, since I'm not assigned to one company, just this last week, I was assigned to our heavy rescue for a few shifts. Get some good experience there, some good people that have been there a long time. So like you said, it's good to get the experience from different people and kind of, learn from them. Because obviously I don't have a ton of time in the fire service. I feel like I've, spent it pretty well so far. But I'm always trying to learn from people, and to get in these different companies, I really can grasp pretty much everything that anybody has to offer me so far being promoted. So.
Hell yeah, man. So, I think Sean, you worked next county north of there for a while. You're pretty familiar with the area where Tyler's at down there in Clearwater. I did a little time over in Hillsboro, so that whole kind of Tampa Bay area, it's pretty large. It's a lot of incidents going on across the Tri-County area. If you look at Hillsboro, Pinellas, and Pasco County, there is a lot of firework that a lot of people don't realize how much fire duty and just crazy calls end up happening in those areas. So definitely a good place to kind of cut your teeth and get some great experiences. You mentioned Citrus County, because I know, Sean, you actually started in Citrus County, correct? Up there for a few years before you went further south.
Close.
How
It was,
dressed?
Sumter.
Sumter. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Yeah, pretty
it
close.
shares a border.
Right. So but how drastically different though from from Sumter County to Pasco or Pinellas? I mean, that's a big difference. People think, oh, they're really close in geography, like distance wise, they're not that far apart, but it is a vastly different experience in the fire service in those areas, right? I mean, it is crazy how different it is the further north you go in the state of Florida compared to, like, you get down like central South Florida, and everything kind of I feel like everything runs together in that Tampa Bay metro area. Like, everything's kind of one big run on city in a lot of ways, but you get a little bit north of there, things kind of open up a little bit. It's a lot different staffing, resource pool, that kind of stuff is quite a bit different, right? And just kind of thoughts on that, man. I mean, you're pretty familiar with where Tyler's at. You're pretty familiar with that area, obviously, spending quite a few years down there. Just kind of for the people listening that aren't familiar with the geography of the state and how things are down there, just want to get your thoughts on really how good the experience is there, and how different it is just in a couple counties difference space wise, as far as call load and types of calls and resources, things like that.
Yeah, it's so I can tell you this, like, that whole Central Florida area, if you want to be a fireman, that's where you go. Like you said, there's a lot of fires, there's a lot of high profile calls. Not that there aren't other places in Florida that catch work, but it seems like that Central Florida area is pretty poppin'. So the difference is too, man, is like Pinellas County, there's like, what is there, Tyler, like 11? Is it 11 different departments or something like that, right?
19 different municipalities, and I think 69 or 70 different stations in the county.
Yeah, so although it's a large county, it's split up into different departments, where like something like Pasco, primarily, it's one large county department. Now in Sumter, it was the same thing, man. When I started there, it was just like a paid on call place, and they had 12 full-time firefighters that worked Monday through Friday. And that has even evolved now into more of a county style department, over 11 firehouses and things like that. So it's a lot different. The staffing is different. Expectations, in Sumter, we had a two-man crews, which has since changed. They have more than that now, but it'd be like me and Tyler on an engine, and both of us are brand new firefighters, and we just had to figure it out because our help was still a long way, so you really had to step into that role and pay attention to what was going on, and you learned a lot because you failed a lot. You made a lot of decisions that you realize later, like, that probably wasn't the best, and you just didn't make those mistakes again, But I can't speak for Tyler because I didn't work in Citrus County, but I can tell you that, like, having that experience really solidified me as a fireman. It really made me think and step outside of my realm of having somebody tell me what to do, and really realize that, like, I need to kind of like make sure that I know I have a pulse on what's going on around, and try and get better from there. So that's a lot of stress to put on a new fireman, but I wish that everybody could experience that, because it's a level of the job that when you're put into that role, you either sink or swim, so I'll toss it over to Tyler, and he can kind of add on to anything that I missed as far as that stuff goes.
Absolutely. Everything you just said, I couldn't agree more. The experience coming from a place like that, like you said, Sumter, you started 2-man engines, 2-man trucks, whatever. Citrus was the same way. I was paid on call when I started, and living in Pinellas County my whole life, and going to fire school in Pinellas County and hearing their experiences, and then going to Citrus. Citrus was still very traditional as far as the fire service goes, in regards to like being a new guy, and tradition of the fire service. And that was really instilled in me from the start. Like I said, really early on, they were like, don't ever, miss an opportunity to train or to learn something new. And just like Sean said, it wasn't really a choice to learn something new. A lot of times it was me and one other person. I remember times taking the brush truck to calls, me and a cadet that wasn't even like on the job, just to keep the engine in service, and having to make the decisions at 19 years old, 20 years old, with a guy that isn't even fire certified, going to different fires and, different calls. So going from there to even, I've worked at a few departments, just like I said, getting my way to Clearwater, anywhere from 2-man staffing to now I work at a department that, runs 4-man truck companies and true trucks. Engine does engine work, trucks do truck work, heavy rescue does basically jack of all trades, whatever is needed on the fire ground. It's been quite the experience so far. And, I really give a lot of credit to those experiences, to getting me to where I am now, and, having the ability to, perform, I guess, how I have so this far in the fire service. Having 2 guys on a rig is, going to a call is completely different, mindset wise, tactics wise, everything. I give a lot of credit to people that start in those places, because it definitely changes your mindset for your future in the fire service.
Yeah, that's beautifully put, man. Having kind of started out in that environment with 2 guys on an engine, and you kind of experiencing everything in between, for small, medium, large departments and everything kind of in between. It is truly a mindset shift when you realize, like, hey, this is all we have for the foreseeable future of this incident. Like, we got to figure this thing out. It does. I think it makes, in my opinion, I think it makes you a more well-rounded firefighter, in the sense of when you've experienced both sides of good staffing and poor staffing, you see both sides of the coin. And I think it makes you better, because you start realizing there's benefits, obviously, to staffing and numbers, but there's things that you could do in your current department that maybe you couldn't do in your previous department, right? And vice versa. There's things that you just you have to kind of John Wayne stuff sometimes and figure things out, but it makes you very resourceful. And then when you do get in a situation where you're blessed with staffing and you're blessed with resources, right? Then it's like, oh man, this is really nice. And you're less likely to take it for granted, right? You're less likely to take those staffing numbers and those resource pool, and apparatus, and, like I said, true trucks and engines and all this stuff. Like, when you're in that environment, when you haven't had that before, it's like, holy smokes, this is really nice, right? This is kind of cool that we actually have people that can do stuff. And but I think at the same time, in the back of your mind, you still go back to where you started, of, hey, if I had to, we can do some stuff here to make this, be effective with a smaller pool of resources. And I think that's the beautiful thing of it. Yeah, exactly, man. So that kind of segues right into our kind of next talking point here. You talked about some of the training that you got involved with as far as doing the USAR stuff, and you've been, going to conferences and trying to soak in the job as much as possible, which is commendable, like I said, for a guy that's, coming in the door, to have people telling you, like, hey, go take classes. That's huge. Because I can tell you right now, like, when I got in the fire service, it took me a few years to realize the deficiencies of my local training, if that makes sense, and to start branching out, because I didn't have people pushing me to go to fire conferences or pushing me to take a bunch of classes, right? It was kind of one of those, like, hey, do some time, and then, you take classes as needed to promote and that kind of thing. That was the mindset that I came into. So kudos to the guys coming in, that you came in under, that are encouraging you and pushing you to, like, hey man, like, get involved, go to training, and obviously it's paid off, right? You made lieutenant Clearwater 6 years, which is outstanding, man. That is absolutely outstanding. I can tell you that there's a lot of guys that that maybe would kind of like, oh man, I don't know if I'm ready for that, but I think, like, all the training and the background and previous experiences, things like that, all kind of culminate, like you said, to make you who you are and prepare you for that opportunity. So I want to talk about the training thing. I want to talk about that first. We'll talk about the promotion stuff here in a minute, but I want to just kind of discuss your mindset with training, and keeping that passion for training and getting after it. week in, week out, year in, year out. Obviously, you've been very consistent through your career. See a lot of your stuff on Facebook. It seems like you're always taking a class. So I want to talk about your mindset with training and some of the things that you've learned along the way, and things to kind of keep the passion going, to stay involved with the job, because it's easy, right? You get in the grind, and it's like, oh, I got to do this class, because I want to be on this team. And sometimes it's almost, you get bogged down with the enormous the responsibility of all the stuff that you got to learn. And I know a lot of guys, man, they get in and it's like, man, I'm just doing this because I'm just trying to get through this class, man, so I can get promoted or whatever. And they start losing that spark, that passion for training, because it's just like, it's just something you do on a daily basis because you have to or whatever. And it seems like you've been able to keep that spark, keep that drive, that passion from the beginning of your career, even, through now being how many years did you get on the job now? 9 years?
Yeah,
Give or
almost
take?
10. Yeah.
Almost 10. So, where's your mindset with that, man? Where's your drive come for that? And what are some of the more enjoyable moments you've had over the years with training? And let's start there, and we'll kind of branch into maybe some of the concepts for new people that are coming in the job, that are listening to this podcast, that are trying to find that direction of which way to go, how to kind of approach the big elephant, because there's so many components to what we do. But yeah, man, throw out some ideas there, some thoughts and your experiences, and kind of what keeps you moving forward.
Yeah. So, like I said, when I first started, I had a lot of people, or a couple guys that I worked with. I'll be honest, I don't even remember who it was. I just remember them saying, take every opportunity you can, and just take the class. And that really gave me the mindset of, I'm not taking a class, like you said and mentioned. I wasn't taking a class to get this next promotion or get this next, certification or whatever. Obviously that comes with taking those classes, of course. But my big motivation, and the reason that I'm still the way I am with training, is because I just take the classes just to have the information, right? I train for the next call, not the next cert or the next promotion. I think that's what's most important to me. Is I've had a lot of ups and a lot of downs, very highs and very lows in my career. And I think a big thing with training is, when I was in fire academy, I was not the strongest fireman. I was not at all. And I think I realized that, but it was something that I loved and I really wanted to do. So my motivation was just becoming the best I can possibly be. Obviously failing along the way, but learning from those failures and not letting it beat me down. Like I said, just taking the classes that were given, taking every opportunity I could to learn, and then obviously got me into this position that I'm in now. Just being ready for the next call. The calls come in, obviously every call is different. And through the experiences and the different places I've worked, like I said, I've worked as the 2-person staffing, where the 2 people on the engine do absolutely everything, to now you go through one cylinder, and, hopefully you got some work on that cylinder. And if you didn't, you're pretty much, that's it. You're not cycling through and whatever. So I feel like the training that you do should kind of, give you the ability to do the most or the least on a fire ground. I don't think training, you should just focus on one type of training. I think, like I said, the most valuable thing is just learn a little bit of everything. Obviously, over time, you'll become proficient in one thing, or you'll, feel more comfortable doing one thing over another in training or on the fire ground. But just taking all those classes and having that more well-rounded, mindset, like you said, I think is very important. Just to be ready for anything, really. So.
Yeah, no, that's there's a lot there. And I was a lot like that too. I wasn't the strongest in the academy. I had a lot of stuff I could work on, but the biggest thing that they would always say is, "Oh, don't worry." Like where you go back to your firehouse or wherever you wind up getting hired, they'll get you all squared away. And I just remember never really feeling prepared. And then where I ended up, I didn't really feel all that prepared either, because although we did training, I felt like I wasn't getting enough, and I'll be honest, like I was messing up and I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, I should know this, and I'm like you, Tyler, I didn't have anybody pushing, me to go to trainings. Not until I went to Sumter County. And when I went to Sumter County, had the chief of the department, I'll remember it, he kind of told me the same thing. Hey man, you never know where your career is going to take you. You might not want to do something now, but later, something might happen, or you might have a change of heart or a different interest, and you want to be prepared for those opportunities. And
Absolutely.
that's kind of what started getting me to taking classes. And, a lot of it too was frustration, frustration that, we weren't doing all the things that would set us up for success. It was just kind of one of those, hey, the fire went out, hey, good job, everybody. Or maybe you really sucked and somebody really told you about it and you thought you did a good job and you're like, oh, damn, So the training aspect of it, I know gets a bad rap these days, but, I've been in a couple classes with you, Tyler, over the years and everything else. And I'll tell you that going to training, especially when you're going there with people that you respect, people that are friends of yours, maybe mentors of you, it's just so much fun. It's such a learning experience, and it's that atmosphere that where you can fail openly and it's okay, right? Like if you mess up, nobody's making fun of you, nobody's pointing fingers, nobody's telling you suck. Like everybody's welcoming. They all want what's best for you. And when you leave and you go back to your department, you just take that experience with you. And the coolest thing about going to training and being involved in training is, let's just call it what it is. Not everybody in your department is going to be on board with that. There's some people that are perfectly cool with not going to trainings and stuff, but finding that person that that you can kind of like grab and take under your wing and show them some things and instill that passion for training in them, and then watch them just take off like a wildfire. That shit is amazing, right? And I think that's what often gets overlooked when it comes to training, is the fact of how much of an impact you can have on other people within your organization or other firefighters that might be, in other departments around you, or just in general, who you might meet and come across during those training events, man. Like you meet some really great friends, and, my phone is full of things. I could call somebody anytime, be like, hey, I got a question, so if anybody who's listening, has kind of had a bad experience with training or anything like that, I just want to point that out, that is probably one of the things where you're going to have to step outside your comfort zone, but you will be glad that you did.
Absolutely. And, just to kind of add on to what you're just saying, like I said, I've had highs and lows in my career so far. And, those lows came when you feel like you're in your own department, wherever that might be. And, the people around you don't have the same passion. They don't have the same drive. They're not going to classes. Right. And, it kind of took my wife to make me realize, she's like, not everybody around you has to be like you. Right. They don't have to have the same mindset. Right. And, I never really thought of it like that. I'm like, you're right. As long as they can do their job, I don't really care if they go to classes or not. Right. I can't make them go. I can't make them pay their money, take their own time. But what was so refreshing, and it's exactly what you just said, when you go to these classes, right? People are spending their own money. They're there on their own dime. They're there because they want to get better and they want to make the fire service better. And if it's one person you reach in your department when you get back with whatever that information is or whatever class you took, if you can reach one person in your department and they can reach one person and then that person can reach one person, right? You're not trying to like change the masses. You're trying to change a couple people or influence a couple people. And then it spreads like wildfire. Now, you have people who you never would have thought are coming to you for something because they heard that you told so-and-so something about this class or this particular call or whatever it might be. And that's what really, was an additional motivator for me to go to these classes, because I wouldn't come back and I would come back sometimes and it was a low time where I would come back and I'd talk about it every day at work, hey, I took this class. Hey, I took this. And, you have those people, they're like, I don't give a fuck what you did last weekend in Orlando. I care what we do here, and I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I guess I'll just shut up then. And I realized I'm like, no, I'm just not going to tell them. I'll wait and I'll have them ask me, or I'll just do what we did at that class. And then when they ask me, oh, where'd you learn that? Oh, well, at the class that you didn't care about 10 minutes ago, so I just changed my approach. I changed my approach and how, that message was spread. And it's become, I feel like it's become pretty regular now that people from my department are going to classes or, coming to me or people that I've talked to for advice or, hey, have you know of an extrication class coming up? I'd like to get better at this, and now that I've become an officer, I've had other officers that when I was a firefighter, they hated my freaking guts. They hated my guts. And now that I promoted and I was close to promoting, and they realize who I am now after 6+ years being there, they're like, hey, you come across one of these classes. I had a call just the other day in Clearwater. We had a pretty significant fatality car crash. It was on my shift. It was on the other side of the city. I was actually off from where I typically am, but they hit a parked crane on US 19, and it basically came in on the A post of the passenger side and impaled the lady. So it was a heavy extrication with an impalement. It was something that our crews, like, if you don't go to extra training and you don't, indulge in these things and these stories from other people's experiences, you may feel pretty uncomfortable when you go to that call or respond to that call. And that officer reached out to me and said, hey, if you have any extrication classes coming up or of any, let me know. I'd like to learn a little bit more, because that really humbled me. They got her out, whatever. She passed away, unfortunate, but it wasn't because of the cruise. It was just, she was done anyway. But yeah, it's just one of those calls, where those trainings and those experiences that people are too proud to ask about. Sometimes, when that call happens, like I said, I'm trying to prepare for that next call. When that call happens and you do well, or you have some information that somebody might want, that's when that fire is lit under their ass to start training as well. So
yeah, and you kind of said something there. Well, you alluded to it, the approach, right?
Yep.
Years ago, when guilty, right, my passion come across the wrong way, right? I just really loved the job. I wanted other people to love the job, and I wanted to share what I learned, and it wasn't malicious. Like, I wasn't trying to tell people, like, you're terrible at your job, you should do things this way. But because I didn't know how to deliver that information, it created a lot of heartburn for me, so over the years, I've also had to learn that, hey, man, you know what? Like you said, not everybody gives a fuck about what you do, and that's okay. They don't have to. But you still have to be the example, right? If this is who you are and this is what you care about, just patiently wait. You don't have to try and drop nuggets all the time on people like, hey, look what I know. Look what I know. Look what I know. That shit's annoying. Nobody wants that, right? But if you're just consistent, right, and you lead by example, and people can see that through your actions, you'll be surprised who reaches out to you with questions. You'd be like, holy shit, I would never thought that person would have asked me anything in my entire career. So that is the power of understanding that passion is great, but it could also be blinding. So if we're trying to change something or improve something, or just get the word about, how this training, it changed your career, whatever it is, sometimes it's better to play the long game and just sit there and, what you show what you can show to people who are interested, but, you don't got to sit at the kitchen table and talk about it 24/7. They know who you are. They know who to come to if they need something. And that is also something worth noting, the fact that people come to you, right, and say, hey, I'm not too proud to admit that I can learn a few things and I know you know something. But that's where our egos got to stay in check too, right? Like, you can't be like, I got him, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And oh yeah, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Sorry.
Go.
No, yeah, I was just going to segue in kind of to what we were saying there and what Nick said is, as far as my involvement in training, right? Those are some motivating factors. Like I said, I love training myself. And then I learned that not everybody, like I said, cares. So I was like, you know what? How can I feel fulfilled, and how can my passion for the job be passed on to people who do care? Well, who cares more, or who cares in our departments? The new guys that come in, the new hires, the new recruits, right? So as soon as I could get in, 4 years ago or so, I became involved as an instructor in our fire department as an adjunct for our recruit schools, because I'm like, if the guys that have 20 years on aren't going to listen, obviously, they know what they know and they're not going to change them now, especially drastically. These new people that come in and they want to be at Clearwater, they want to learn, they want to be sponges. And, somebody that's already there, I felt that was very fulfilling to me, to be able to kind of spread that passion and the knowledge on from my experiences, whether it be in classes or at other fire departments with minimum staffing, maximum staffing, all that stuff. because that's where those people come from. A lot of people come to Clearwater because they worked at a department that has no staffing, or they don't search, or they don't get on roofs, or they don't do such and such. Well, now that's the opportunity I felt that was the most selfishly, fulfilling for me. But at the end of the day, it's not selfish, because when those guys get out into the streets and they're providing for our citizens, and they're doing these things that I've learned that are very good, or I've learned from other people that people say work, and that I've seen it work in training. I see it out on the street now. These guys coming out and they're doing well. And that was how my kind of way to give back, and to be able to spread that message that I learned in those classes and stuff like that. And that's one of the main reasons I got involved as an instructor.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure now, or you're going to learn, being a new company officer, you're going to appreciate that, people coming in already kind of knowing what their jobs are and being decent at it. And that's really what it's about, right? Like you said, you got involved with the training, trying to get the new recruits to come in, developing high performance firefighters right out of the gate, and then sending them on to shift is something that we have to understand. Like, that is irreplaceable, right? A lot of people are like, well, I'll just do what I'm told when I'm told to do it. But that's not what we want. We want critical thinking firefighters. I want to know, like, if I look at somebody and I say, hey, I need you to do this, that they're not giving me a blank stare, like they have no idea this is the first time they've ever been told to do something. I'd like to see more go-getters, right? And that's only going to happen one way. Is like you said, like, hey, if I want to change the face of this organization as far as performance goes for our firefighters, I need to do it right there in training, right? As soon as these people come through the front door, we got to get on them quick. And, you might not win over everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, some of them might fall victim to the guys that are burnt out and that's their comfort zone. But we're gonna be able to sink our teeth into a few of them, and those people are gonna just continue that on too. And on the fire ground or any other incident, that those are the people. Make no mistake about it. Those are the people that the chiefs are looking at. Like, hey, I got an assignment. I'm gonna bypass this crew because I want that crew. And that's what we should all strive for.
Yeah, and to go back to kind of what we talked about earlier with our previous experiences, right? This is something that I wholeheartedly kind of agree and disagree with. Is when you're hired at a new organization, right? People come in and they're like, oh, I have such and such experience, right? Why in an interview do they ask you what your experiences are, right? When you get in recruit school and they say, I don't care what you did at your old department. I don't care what you've done in the past. I don't care. This is how we do it. This is why we do it. And you're going to do it this way. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't condone that. I don't fall victim to that. When I'm an instructor at our department, I'll let other senior instructors, say those things. But at the end of the day, what happens when they are on a fire ground their first day? They're not doing what they did on the fire ground because we told them to do it in recruit school. They're doing what they did on the fire ground based on past experience that they brought with them, or lack thereof, from, coming to our department. So I try to utilize, or at least tell them, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget what you learned at your old department, right? Now, if you learn something with two-person staffing, and, you probably aren't going to use that very much at Clearwater, but I want you to remember that mindset. I want to remember you doing a lot with a little, right? So when you fall in that shortcoming on a fire ground, you're going to fall back on what you did with two people, and you're going to get out of it or make the best of it. I love taking people's experiences and basically seeing, it's kind of a fun game to me, is to take what people already know and kind of input our way into what they already know, right? Kind of just mold them into Clearwater firemen, not, a Sumter County fireman that came to Clearwater, or just forgetting everything they ever knew. Because if I forgot everything that I ever knew, or all my experiences, because we don't do it that way at Clearwater, I'd be learning from day one. I'd be pretty much useless. You can't learn everything at one department. Just like the reason we go to trainings because we want to learn things from other people's experiences, other people's mindsets. And it'd be, non-beneficial to just try to do things one way and have that mindset. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah. Man, you guys have made some really good points over the last few minutes. And I just want to kind of add on just a couple thoughts here. The first thing is, you got to train. You got to get out there. You got to mix it up. You got to take a holistic. I like your approach. It's a very holistic approach to the job. anything I can learn to make me better is gonna benefit me. It's gonna benefit me. It's gonna benefit my crew. It's gonna benefit the fire department. At the end of the day, it's easy for guys to get pigeonholed in like, I like this, so I'm going to take classes on this only, and not take, we should be taking classes that are challenging us outside of our comfort zone, right? So I have no qualms about telling people like, I love engine stuff, like that's my passion. That's kind of my thing that I like to do. But I still like to take classes on truck operations, rescue stuff, whatever, extrication, even EMS stuff. I mean, I know it's a bad word. You can't say that in a fire podcast, but the thing is, like, it is part of what we do.
So much respect for you.
I know, right?
Anyway, continue. Go ahead. Sorry.
Continue. So, I mean, like, the thing is, like, whatever I can do to sharpen my skill set, if I get an opportunity to learn, I mean, take the opportunity. That's the point is, I'm not in a command role right now, but I do like to take classes from time to time on that job because it gives me an appreciation and a respect for the incident commanders on the fire ground, or just trying to get inside the mind of people that are running those incidents, so that as an operator, I kind of see where they're coming from too, right? See both sides of the coin. And that's my point is, like, you have to take a holistic approach. Yes, you're going to find one or two things you probably hone in on that you really, really like to do. But if you only train on things that you like to do, right, you're not going to be the best version of yourself. You're not going to grow. You have to step outside your comfort zone, and take classes that are going to make you a better provider as a whole. Whether it's fire, extrication, technical rescue, whatever it is, you're a better operator in that arena because you're taking a big picture approach to the job. And so, like, people coming into the job, it's easy to look at the enormity of what we do as a fire service, from technical rescue to hazmat to, fire, EMS, extrication, confined space stuff. I mean, you can put command stuff in there, ICS. There's so many degree programs. There's all this stuff out there, right? National Fire Academy, they have their thing, and you got all this stuff in front of you. It's like, where do you start? To me, it's like, start with the fundamentals, start with the basics, get good at the basics of being a fireman. If you're an assistant that does EMS, you should probably be somewhat proficient in that, right? Start with the basics of what the most likely things you're going to need to have and to hone and to do, and then branch out from there. But the thing is, training is a big elephant, and you got to take little bites. You can't digest the whole thing at one time, and it's that constant effort, one bite at a time, every single day, doing something to better yourself, something to learn, something to grow. And I love that mindset, man. That mindset of like, hey, I want to take anything and everything I can to be better. So sometimes that means doing stuff that maybe I may take a class and be like, oh yeah, that wasn't that great. Or maybe I only walked away with one or two things. Or, hey, you know what? I had this pop up in my career where I was probably 3 or 4 years on the job. And like, why are you taking fire officer classes, man? Like, you need to sit, in the back seat or whatever, or you just need to worry about being a fireman. You don't need to take those classes. But for me, I was like, I'm looking at it, it's like, I just want to understand the job more. I want to understand tactics and strategies and what my boss is thinking, so that I can be a better fireman. And so, a lot of people will hate on guys for going out and getting classes. Don't get me wrong. Here's the thing. By no means was I an expert in any of those things I took. Just because I took some Fire Officer 1 classes didn't make me a great officer. Just because I took hazmat tech, I wasn't instantly a guru, right? So I think it's important that we also understand that there is, education is one piece of the pie. Then you got to take those skills and training and apply those skill sets and learn, kind of how to implement those into the incident. And then the last part is experience. Like, you have to take the training and the education, and you have to put it together on the fire ground. And until you could do that, until you could put all that stuff together, you don't have the whole picture, if that makes sense. You don't have the whole picture until you start taking the things you've learned and the skills that you built, and can then learn the context on scene, whatever that scene is, where to put them, right? Where to plug those things in and make them work. So I love that approach, man. You talk about training new guys. I just want to point this out. If you want to change a culture, it's never fast. It literally is. It's a little bit here, a little bit there. I love that you brought up, you don't have to change the whole department, right? You don't have to influence the whole department. Find 1 or 2 people to invest in, right? And get those people to, you get a couple people that buy in, that are on board with what's going on, and let those people reach out to a couple more people, right? That's how that groundswell starts, right? That's how that, I think Aaron Fields says it best with, yep, Fields, baby. Fields says it all the time. And there's a lot of truth to that, because it is just that little incremental, one bubble here, one bubble there. Next thing you know, you got a nice rolling boil because you've got guys that are getting plugged in. And lastly, my last thought, just kind of summarizing what I was thinking with your guys' conversation on just the approach and how we kind of take that information to our departments. It's one of those things, like, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. If we take time to build relationships and to build trust, I think that goes a long way. And, if we a little here, a little there, and let people come to you, because they're going to see you operating and see you training. They're like, man, that guy's like really getting after it. And they're going to start having questions. And when they have those questions, it opens the door to share that passion a little bit, to plant those seeds, right? To kind of get those little incremental thought seeds, if you will, in their mind of like, oh man, maybe I should take this class, or maybe I can do better, right? And the thing is, like, sometimes we don't see those seeds grow for a really long time. Sometimes it's years later, or maybe never in our career, that you don't know something you said, something you did, just by being consistent day in and day out, how it impacts people along the way. And new people are a great way to do it, man. If you want to change the culture, man, training, especially new people coming to the door, is the way to do it. It builds esprit de corps. Let's be honest. Like, training, when you're in a slump, can sometimes just get out and sweating with the guys, putting in work, sharing ideas, builds a team cohesion. It builds teamwork, and it builds better firefighters, better, the thing is, you're not going to change the culture. You show me a department that has a great culture, and I will show you a department that trains often, that trains with purpose and intent, that has a good training culture, because that's what it takes, in my opinion. From what I've seen, I think if you really want to have a positive impact in your organization, it starts on the training ground. It starts, shift in and shift out, just that little extra effort to learn and to grow. And it is contagious. Little by little, people start catching on, like, man, oh, that's awesome. Oh, hey, I learned this in this class, or I listened to this podcast the other day, and they remember that, and then they use it on the program. Like, oh man, holy shit, that worked. Like, that's awesome. And it gets that little spark. It's that little ember, right? It's that little bit, and all you're doing is with training and with the being a proponent for positive growth and changing your department, is you're just fanning the fire a little bit, right? You're just kind of, it's that 10% of pressure 100% of the time, a little here, a little there. It's not in your face. It's not confrontational, right? A lot of guys that are passionate about this job early, we all go through this phase in our career where we hit the wall because we're very passionate, and we just like, yeah, let's go. And like, and then you look around and like, everyone's like, dude, fuck you. Like, we're watching like soap operas, bro. Like, chill. It's 2 PM, Days of Our Life is on. Like, settle down. But it's easy to get discouraged, right? And I see this progression through so many passionate guys. Talk to any instructor out there that's been around for any length of time, or any guy that's into the job, and they all go through the same progression in their career, where they come in, they're really eager, and all of a sudden they fire lit under them, and they start doing training and do all of a sudden they want to share it. They're very passionate, and all of a sudden they realize, like, people are pouring water on their parade and trying to put out that fire, and they get really discouraged. And sometimes it gets a little chippy and pissy, because you're like, what's your problem, man? I'm just trying to be better. And you just don't understand why everybody's not this way. And then you finally get to a point of acceptance and realizing, like, wait, everybody's not me. Like, I'm my own person, right? And then you start seeking out mentors, like Sean was saying. You go to trainings, and it lifts your spirits up, man. You find people where you're allowed to fail, you're allowed to grow, you're allowed to, vent some of those things, and you find out that there's a lot of similarities, right? Similar stories out there, and you start realizing you're not alone. And then the next thing you know, you start kind of growing as a person, growing as an instructor, growing as a fireman. And next thing you know, you kind of turn that corner. Hopefully, you don't let it make you bitter, and you be better. But that's my rant on it, man. I think that you guys like had so many great points, and I'm sitting there like just mental notes of, from training to change, and how we approach the job, and how we approach our peers. You want people to contribute to the organization. We don't ever want to create an environment where people feel that they can't contribute and be part of the team, right? And I think that's the thing. It's like, it's okay to say, hey, we have our set of things that we do, because this is why we do them, right? This is how we do things here. Learn the context coming in as a new person, but at the same time, we want people to be critical thinkers. We want people to contribute, and it's a fine line, right? You don't want someone coming in and saying, "Well, in my old department, we did this and this," and like, because that gets old really fast. But on the flip side,
Absolutely.
you don't want somebody that's afraid to talk, afraid to ask questions, afraid to share their passion and experiences. Like, that's not healthy either.
Yeah, and to kind of segue into being a new officer, right? I use the same mentality with my crews that I work with. I worked one of my first shifts as an officer, promoted officer. I worked at one of the beach stations that I've maybe worked like 12 hours there in my time at Clearwater. I've never worked with either one of the guys there ever in my career so far. One of them had like 18 years on. One's got around the same. They both had like 18 years on. It would be doing myself, the citizens we serve, everything, the firehouse vibe for the day, everything. If I went in there and basically said, this is the way things are going to be because this is my experience, and I want to use those guys to the best of my ability, right? There's high rises out there that I wouldn't even know where to find this first staircase in the place, but they've been there, right? I'm going to utilize those guys. I'm going to instill that sense of trust and that sense of learning from those guys from the first second, right? As we're getting our gear in the rig, my go-to is like, hey guys, if there's any buildings here that you want me to know about, if there's anything in this area that, I'm not perfect. I'm not the best at any of this, as much as I'd like to be. You help me out and you give me everything that you have, and I'll give you everything I have. And together we can have a good day and, knock everything out that we have to do for the day. And so far I've found that, that has been really, receptive. People have been really receptive to that. Utilize your people that have the experience, just like you would in a class. I'm not going to go to a station and be like, oh, well, I'm teaching today. No, I want to learn from you guys. I have some stuff to give, absolutely. But like I said, the delivery, right? My delivery in the past wasn't the greatest. So now I don't do the delivering. I try to like make their, creative juices flow and try to have them try to teach me something or teach the crew something. Show us where the stairwell is. Show us where the FDC is. Something simple. It doesn't have to be at 4 hours in the sun pulling lines and stuff. It could be something simple of, a target hazard building that, is rough or has scissor stairs or whatever. And utilizing those people like you would in a class, learn the most from those people and their experience and the resource that's there. So,
yeah, I love that approach. One of the things that I always like to do to my officers, especially if I haven't worked with them before, I haven't worked with them often, is, hey, what do you expect out of me today? And some of them give me some insight. Some of them say, just do your job. And then you do what you think is right. And then you find out that's not what they want. So those questions are very specific, right? Like, hey, I'm asking you this for a reason because although I have time on in the fire service as a whole, I don't know everything. And I need to know what you want as my officer. So you taking that approach immediately, like, hey, if you guys got something to offer, you got something, please tell me. I'm not perfect. Dude, as a firefighter, right in the back seat, I love when an officer does that. Not because of any other reason other than I feel like I'm operating as a team at this point, right? That I have the comfort that I can say, hey, I had a fire in this type of building, or hey, we ran this type of call before, and this is what happened. And what I've realized is sometimes some officers will say that, but then you start giving your opinions, right, and sharing it, and then they get mad. And it's like, well, if you're going to say that to somebody, be prepared, that they're going to take you up on it. So I think that goes a long way. That shows that, how much humility you have to tell people who may have more time on you, or may not, to say, there is stuff that that I don't, and that's okay. Let's get through this day together. Let's get through this together because you know what? Not a single one of us has all the answers, but collectively together, we can make a damn good plan. So,
absolutely.
so fostering that environment is great. I just wish more officers, or even senior firemen or whoever it happens to be who says those things, that they truly mean what they say, and they don't just say that as like fluff. And then when you start giving, some input, they get offended, because all that does is halt the progress of your crew. Now it's like, well, why didn't you say something? Well, guess what, motherfucker? Last time I said something, you jumped my shit. So what do you want from me? You want me
You
to
break,
give you
you
my
break that trust. You break that
You-
trust of like the vulnerability, right? And
Yep.
that vulnerability, like you said, you can't say it and don't talk about it unless you're going to be about it, you know? And my
100%.
thing is like, I would be stupid if I was going to go in there and think that I knew more about the city, more about a building and a zone that I'd never been in ever. And it doesn't matter. I gave that as an example because that just happened last week, you know? But the last thing that you want, and you know, as a firefighter, backstep, Nick, myself, like if an officer comes in, especially somebody that has less time on, right? And we always talk about time on the job. Time on the job doesn't equate to experience, right? I'm a firm believer in that. But what little bit of experience any of those people have, right? You allow yourself to be vulnerable with your tailboard, right? You don't go in, acting like you're better than anybody else, right? The delivery that we talk about, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again. Like your delivery has to be there, and it has to foster that environment of learning for everybody. You don't want somebody to feel like, oh shit, this person came in here today and they're telling us what to do, and them knowing that you don't have a clue what you're talking about when you're going to some of these buildings and some of these places. So I agree. The vulnerability has to be there from the officer, and it has to be the actions have to back up the words coming out of your mouth. And I
Sure.
mean that not just job performance, but you're actually going to take them up on their experience, and obviously take it into consideration, and you have to trust those people that they're giving you good information too, because as an officer, I understand that side of it too. And you both can attest to it that, sometimes you've been given information that might end up biting you, and it might not have been the most truthful information from those people, them just trying to tell you what to do or trying to give you something to give you something. You obviously have to vet that information through experience. And then upon failure, explain to them, hey, this is what we did. This is why it didn't work, and get better from it. So
No, I love that. And I'm just going to add this point because I feel like it'd be missing something if I didn't. This is a two-way street, right? So we have to understand that, like, if your officer has that trust and that humility to say something to you, like, hey, if you see something, say something, or, like, I don't know everything, please tell me something. That's not a free pass to tell your officer how to do their fucking job. All right.
absolutely.
And I think that's misunderstood because now you have a subordinate barking orders at the officer because in their mind, they're like, well, you told me that if I wanted to say something, I could say something. So there has to be a very distinct line of like, hey, I trust you. However, I'm still going to make the final decision, right? I'm asking you for your help on something like that. I'll note it, I'll process it, whatever. And if I think it's great, then we'll use it. But people have to understand that like there's still a rank structure, right? And there's still a respect level that has to be had, even if you don't agree with the decision being made. It's not your decision to make. So, just I've seen that time and time again where it's like you give them a little and they want to take a mile, and as a firefighter or a subordinate, you still have to kind of humble yourself, right? And
Yeah.
realize that. So,
Well,
I just
two
want to make
words.
that point.
2 words: respect and tact. As a firefighter, first of all, giving that respect, like, hey, and the thing is, it's not I only respect you if I agree with you. It's I respect you because you've been here longer, you put in some time, right? And listen, I get it. There are great officers out there. There are not so great officers out there. But it's having enough respect for the department, for the rank structure, and the time that person's put in that organization, and saying, hey, I'm going to give you respect. And because here's the thing, if we want respect in return, we have to give it. You absolutely have to give it. And then using a little tact, right? Understanding there's a time and a place to have those discussions. And, maybe not in front of a group of officers or chiefs is the time to sit down and like basically question the decisions of your officer in front of all those people, right? Like you're out there training on the drill ground, like, pull them aside, like, hey, I got a question on this, right? Not like chief standing there like, hey man, why did you do that? That seemed kind of dumb. Like, again, there's no tact there. That's you may think in your head like that was really dumb, or that was an egg-headed thing, or like, I just help me understand how this all works, because this seems really, really like it doesn't gel. Like that, you do that, it's the same thing with an officer. If you dress down your people in front of their peers, right? What happens? You lose you lose a little leadership buy-in and credit, right? Because people they're under attack, right? You've injured their ego. And same thing with your officer. As a firefighter addressing the officer, you got to do it with some tact and understand, like, if you do this in the right setting, in the right tone, it could be a very beneficial conversation. But if you come at them sideways, especially in front of other people, where you're kind of questioning and making them trying to make, if you come at them like you're trying to make them look dumb, like they don't know, and you do, you're 100% going to lose any kind of like credits you had with that officer. You've lost, because they're not going to want to give you that opportunity again, right? They're gonna avoid any of your questions, avoid your conversations. And so that being said, I want to talk about just a couple things, Tyler, on your end, as a new officer, some of the challenges as being a new officer, and some of maybe the things that you've already learned, as a step up, and now getting into that formal role. Some pitfalls that you've seen, even with officers you've worked for, where maybe they lose credit as an officer, or things that they can do to damage their stock as an officer. So what are some things that you've seen in your organization that can lose the crew, lose the people, lose their the followership? Maybe they follow you because they have to. Because here's the thing, like, I'll be honest, man, like, I've learned some things the hard way. I made mistakes. I will be the first to tell you that, for example, one of the things that I had to learn the hard way is, like, you can't demand you out of everybody else, right? You have to, your own standards are your own standards, and you have to, the goal should be to incrementally bring everybody up, but you can't get upset if people are not you, right? That don't have the same passion, same drive. That's one thing, for example, that I can think of right off the top of my head, of things that I've done wrong, things where I've been too ambitious, too, pushed too hard, right? But I just want to hear from you, in your organization, in your experience, man, things that you look at and say, man, you got to be careful. Maybe mistakes you made, or mistakes you see in other officers that you've kind of made notes of and said, hey, man, maybe not go down this road, or try a different approach here. What are some things that you see as pitfalls for new officers getting promoted in the fire service, especially in that initial company officer role?
So yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head here a second ago, in regards to, the biggest thing I learned, obviously, from the downfalls as a firefighter in my delivery of things, and, how I pass along information and how I learn. There's a lot of people that you learn from that are really, really good. And there's a lot of people you learn from that are really, really bad. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what, your mindset really is, you're going to fall back on the training you have. So I don't feel that an officer or a firefighter or anybody should try to, like I said, make somebody who they are, right? They're going to, at the end of the day, they're going to do what they're going to do. They're going to perform to the highest level of their training. They're not just going to all of a sudden be better because you told them to be better. They have to want it. They have to actually engage in those trainings and in the learning those things. So as a firefighter, I was put in some spots early on, like at Citrus and Newport Richey and some places I worked, where I was put in, a quote unquote leadership role on the rig because of the seat assignment and the staffing. So from an early age, I learned kind of how to make those decisions, or I thought I did. And by making mistakes, you parked in the wrong spot, or you pulled the wrong line, or, you didn't pull ceiling when you should have pulled ceiling, or you didn't pull enough. Learning from failures, I think, is the most beneficial thing that you can do. All these classes you take are great, and, utilize them on the fire ground and in your firehouse, but learning from people who are not always better than you, whether it's your opinion or just facts, is very beneficial. I'm not going to use any type of exact examples because, people hear these things, but you do learn a lot from people who, may not be the best example of what to do. So I learned a lot from people who I didn't feel did a great job, and not because of my opinion. It was just because of the feedback that we got as a crew, whether it be response times, whether it be, on the fire ground, somebody's first due or somebody beat us into our first due because of response times, or, the fire got away from us a little bit because we didn't pull the right line. Well, at the end of the day, that falls on the officer, as we all know. And, remembering that feeling of being a firefighter on that rig, of having an officer that was too proud to be vulnerable with their crew or listen to their crew and their experiences, right? Because like I said earlier, 20 years of experience or 20 years on the job does not mean 20 years of experience. And I hold that dear to my heart because we've got plenty of those people in our department. They're like, I've been here 20 years, so I do it this way because this is the way I do it. And every time a fire comes in or every time they're on a call, they fuck it up. And it's like, well, it's this person's fault and this person's fault, this person's fault. It's never their fault. It's never their training. It's never their lack of, passion for the job or motivation to be better. It's always somebody else's fault. And at the end of the day, it ends up falling on the tailboard, or not falling on the tailboard, but being blamed on the tailboard. My tailboard didn't do this. My tailboard didn't do that. And that drives me up a wall. And I think you lose all credibility and all trust of not only your crew that you're with on that incident, but word travels fast in the fire service. So the second you blame somebody, blame your tailboard for your inconsistencies or your deficiencies, now everybody else in the department now is going to know that you're that guy, or, that when something happens, you're going to blame the tailboard, or you're going to blame somebody else other than yourself. So me as an officer, I take the approach of, at the end of the day, it's going to fall on me no matter what happens. I don't care if my tailboard messes up because it is on me still that I didn't teach or I didn't give that expectation to my firefighter to perform to the standard that I put forth for them at the beginning of shift or from the recruit academy. So that's where the training comes in with the recruits. They kind of know what I expect when they get out on the line and they know who I am as a firefighter or an officer. And I hope that they, perform to that standard. So, I guess to kind of sum up that experience of having some bad officers, having some really good officers, and just kind of taking what I not only liked and didn't like, but what worked and didn't work on the fire ground, or on calls.
Dude, yeah, that's a great way to sum it up, right? It takes humility, accountability, and ownership as an officer. I mean, and that's what you look for. I mean, as a firefighter, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for an officer who, you don't have to know all the answers to be a good officer. And this took me a long time to realize you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be the guy leading the charge and training on everything. You can be a facilitator, right? Give ownership to other people. Have a self accountability and accountability to people, right? And I think Chief Avillo says it best. Firm, fair, and friendly. That's a great way to sum it up. Firm, fair, friendly. And if you do those things, you're going to be successful a lot more than you're not. And I want to segue into one last thing here, and that is the Grab Lab class. So it's relatively newer for you guys. You guys have been kind of hitting the road with it the last year or two with the Grab Lab. I want to just kind of dive in on, first of all, where the class came from and your passion for search. And I'll let Sean kind of lead conversation on this because I know this is kind of his baby too. I think you guys are probably going to nerd out, and I'm just going to be taking notes for a little bit. But I just share a few minutes of your background and your passion for search and kind of where the class kind of concept came from and what you're trying to do with it. And just your thoughts on search in general and how that impacts the modern fire service.
So it derived from just taking classes. And like we said earlier, utilizing people's experience in the way their department does it, and trying to use my experience through being at a place that has 2 people staffing, 3-man staffing, 4-man staffing, etc. I'd go take these classes, and it really struck me a couple of years ago. I took a class, and it was, I forget who it was. Somebody was teaching as an adjunct with somebody, and they were from FDNY, and we were venting roofs down in Fort Lauderdale, and we were using K12s with a Warthog blade on a single family duplex wood frame, run of the mill bread and butter house in Florida. And, it was so cumbersome to do this using a K12. And I asked the guy, I said, hey, these skills are great. I was learning how to use a K12 better than I ever have in my life, up on this roof, but it's 100 degrees. You're fighting the saw the entire time, and I was like, they're teaching us how FDNY does it. Right. Well, I can use those skills, but I will never use that saw on a roof in Florida right off the bat. Unless all my other saws are broken, I'll grab it. Because we carry K12 with a Warthog blade on both of our trucks. I can use it, but I never would. It's going to be a lot more work, and it's going to be less efficient at the end of the day. So I thought to myself, I'm like, I always take something from these classes, no matter what the class is. Like you said, if it's not something that I like, I learn a lot, or that I've been through, I learn a lot. But I at least try to take a couple things. And, one of the things that we do with our class is we kind of interview the students at the beginning, right? I've worked, like I said, 2 people, whatever. The guys that I have, Chris and Vlad, that teach with me, Vlad rides rescue all the time, which is an ambulance in our area. But what their city does is the 2 people on the rescue task up with the first due engine and the first due truck to create 2 4-man units. Well, he's performing search potentially or outside truck ops off a rescue. So Chris used to work at a station that was kind of an outlying station, and in their city, they don't run mutual aid with their truck companies very often. So like they run mutual aid. I guess what I should say is they don't have other people's trucks coming into their area. So if he's an outlying engine, his truck might be coming from all the way across the city. So if he's second due and a search hasn't been done, he's searching off an engine, right? Searching off a hose line. Well, in our department, our truck companies do 99.9% of the search, and they can search ahead of a hose line. So from very minimal staffing to 4-man staffing to, searching off a rescue, searching off a truck, there's some experience from one of us on real calls in real time to be able to give these students nuggets from their staffing. So I'm not going to tell somebody that is from wherever that has 2 people on an engine, I'm not going to tell them how to search from a 4-man truck company's standpoint. That would be absolutely not beneficial to them. And as a student, we've gotten good feedback from that, where we'll make sure that they kind of attach themselves to somebody, either one of us or somebody else in the class, right? Like I said, I do the same thing when I'm teaching as I do at the firehouse. If there's somebody in class, I encourage them to challenge what we have, right? Just the last time, I'm a fan of the officer being first in a search to set the pace of the search. And also the officer's probably the most experienced, I would hope. And if they're not, then, you call that audible then. But as the officer, I like to be able to set the pace of the search. So I was teaching that just at MAFC, and somebody, I kept asking them, hey, give me some answers. If you guys have feedback or anything, challenge me or challenge us to why we're doing it this way or why we're teaching this. And somebody did. They're like, well, we don't search with the officer first. We search with the officer second. I said, all right. I said, I encourage you to do it our way and then try it your way as well. In a couple of their evolutions, they ended up the firefighter that was in front of the so-called officer, the orientated person. A couple people got lost. They'd be all over the place and they had no control over the search whatsoever. Well, you end up at the end of the day searching for your people to continue your search for victims of the house, right? The last thing I want to do is try to find, my crew when I'm trying to search. Now it just takes too much time. So we try to I've wrote the curriculum, but we bend it to try to basically get the most out of it. So these people, wherever they come from, we try to give them the most that's structured towards what they do as far as staffing and who searches in their department.
Yeah, definitely like the catering to the student, because we do the same thing when we search. Our cadre is mixed very well, and it's important. Like we'll customize a program just for them. Like when people reach out to us for a search program, the first thing that I normally say is, well, number one, what does your department look like? I want to know your staffing. I want to know your response times. I want to know like your model of operation, like how things get structured. But most importantly, I want to know what you feel like you need to work on. And we'll build that class just for them. So no search class we do is ever the same. Not even the lecture, right? Not even the lecture portion. Because that's the whole point, right? And I'm a firm believer, if you can't do that and you can't be dynamic enough to change your program to fit the student's needs, you probably shouldn't be teaching it, because you only know what you know and you're closed-minded and you don't want to expose yourself to the fact of, hey, maybe they might show me something, or I might have to say, I don't know, I've never done that before, So having the students, I don't want to say run the training, but lead, with their experiences or where they came from or come from is definitely important. You have to do that, because nobody wants to take a class and feel like they're just being preached at and they're not being heard. Nobody wants to take a class where they feel like, hey, it was cool information, but I'm never going to use any of it. So my other question for you is, dig a little deeper into your program. What are some of the things that you're teaching the students, maybe in a lecture or skill wise, that you feel really makes your program?
So like I said, the big thing for us, and the feedback we've got so far from the different conferences we've been to, and just, kind of presenting the program was that catering to the wants and needs and experiences of the students in the class, is first and foremost the big thing. Honestly, we definitely dig as deep as into search as we need to. But like you said, not one of our programs has ever been the same. We've learned things from students every time we've taught. We've implemented things into our class that we actually will give credit to the person that we learned it from, wherever it would be, whatever conference it was. We like to go back to the basics of search, right? We allow them to use tools. We allow them to use the stuff in their pockets, just like, I don't believe in taking things away from them, but I do believe that ticks die. I do believe that flashlights die. I do believe that there's a lot of value in, using your sense of touch, your sense of smell, which you lose when you have a mask on, and your sense of hearing and all that kind of stuff, which a lot of people end up losing when they're utilizing those tools. They're relying on their flashlight. They're relying on their tick. We really, emphasize using the tick as a tool, and not a GPS as to, leading your search for you. You are leading the search as a human. That tick is just, helping you be more efficient with your search, right? I more utilize the tick, and we teach that the tick is more to find windows and find doors and find egress and such, rather than finding the victim. The tick should not find the victim unless it's obvious. If they're in the middle of the room laying there, you could see it. But, obviously we know the tick's capability is and we don't get too far into the tick, because the tick is you could go so far into a tick. So we try to just give them the basics of a tick, but really focus on the down and dirty of searching. I know it's kind of cliche, the dirty search or down and dirty, whatever. Everything's a down and dirty class, but it really opens people's eyes, and it opens our eyes as instructors and as firemen, to how advanced somebody can be with a tick, and how advanced they can be with, the flashlight and all that kind of stuff. But when that's not available, to them, to see the humbling that gives them, it gives us purpose, because we teach, like I said, a lot of like just hands-on search, sweeping floors, sweeping behind doors, branching out, the different positions. We do 2-person and 3-person searches, really, is what I break it down to, because I'm not a big word guy. I don't like, this is going to sound bad. I like VES. I encourage VES. I think it's great. But at the end of the day, it's like it ties people's hands. We actually implemented something into our class. I swear to God, last class we implemented this because we just wanted to try it out and see how people took it. And starting your search from a different place other than the front door, right? So we had them throw a ladder. We talked about entering a window, sweeping before you sound, getting in, rolling in the window, and that kind of thing. Obviously, you're going to control the flow path if that's what's needed. But at the end of the day, you're still just performing a search, entering a different area. People kept saying, "Oh, VES, they try to go find a door, close it." I'm like, no, all you're doing is just entering. It's just giving you a different mindset. I'm entering the second floor, and your orientation, and you're sizing up the building. So I'm entering the second floor now. I'm not counting windows on the first floor when I'm going in. You might do another 360 real quick to count your windows on the second floor, or look for your, vent fans for a bathroom and stuff like that. And it really was blowing people's minds a little bit, because they're like, this isn't a VES. And I'm like, no, it's not a VES. We're just allowing you to make entry from a different point, right? And in Pensacola the other day, I actually screen recorded it and sent it to the boys. They entered through a second floor because the first floor was cut off by fire. They entered the second floor and started a primary search. They didn't, beyond the door, that kind of thing. They didn't isolate. They didn't just go beyond the door. They initiated a primary search from a second floor window and removed victims, doing what we just did in class. Obviously, the people at that fire were not in our class. We didn't have anybody from Pensacola, but the chief explained exactly what we just did in our last class. And those kind of stories, give us the purpose of like, all right, well, that is applicable. And that's something that we do in our department. We absolutely will enter a second floor, and start a primary search. Now, yeah, you might close the door when you leave just to, control that flow path, and continue down the hallway. But just because you enter a different location other than the front door doesn't automatically make it a VES, or it doesn't automatically make it more dangerous. It's just you're using the same skills, just entering from a different part of the building.
Yeah, that's something that the mindset needs to shift, right? And like even when we teach search, industry standards use the VES, right? So we use it, but we tell people like, hey, like don't get pigeonholed into one thing. And it's really simple for us. We tell students, hey, the best way to find victims or the best way to search for victims is through the best entry point to locate them. So, if you know that your floor plan has all the bedrooms in the back, maybe we start from the back instead of the front door. It's going to be the quickest way to your victims, things like that. Or maybe we go in through a window. The other thing we're trying to tell people is that front door is overutilized, right? It's like it's our starting point for everything for some reason. And if our objective is to put water on the fire the quickest way possible, plus search for victims the quickest way possible, why are we not thinking like, hey, maybe even our fire attack? So like if we have a fire on a second floor, can we not just go in the window with a line and search at the same time? That cuts the whole thing of, hey, I need to isolate, right? Because I'm putting the line where it needs to go immediately, and that frees up my guys to search and not have to worry about finding doors or whatever. And people are like, well, you can't do that. I'm like, yeah, it's called lines over ladders. Boston Fire Department does it all the time. It's a mindset shift just because culturally that's just something that they haven't done, right? Or maybe they haven't learned yet. But when we start breaking things down into what makes sense and what's going to make us more efficient, what's going to put water on the fire fastest, what's just going to get us to our victims the fastest, and we put that into application, it's amazing how many people like their eyes are open. They're like, well, we would never thought about doing that. And then they go do it. And then you hear the success story, right? And you're like, yeah, and right, wrong, or indifferent, not saying you have to do everything we teach or say or whatever, but like, can we just start opening our minds a little bit? And that's really what a search class to me is about, is I'm going to give you information. I'm going to share my failures with you because there's been a lot, and I'm going to share what I've learned and how I've been able to be successful. And I want you to take that and try and implement it into your organization too, because, at the end of the day, everybody's experiences are different, right? And we ultimately say this: I could teach you how to be the best searcher in the world, right? And like you can have that shit dialed in, man. But if you don't know how to remove these victims, you might as well never enter the building, right? Yep. Because you're not doing anybody any good. So a large portion of our class isn't just like teaching how to search, it's teaching how to remove people. Are you guys also doing that in your program, showing different? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we do. We start out. We kind of did it backwards when we first started. We would do all the drags and all that kind of stuff at the very beginning, and then we'd go into the actual structure of search. And then we kind of realized we're like, well, we're teaching these people how to remove them before we teach them how to search. So we we've got it dialed in kind of to where we break it up kind of 50-50. We teach the ideas, the mindset, and all that kind of stuff, search, and the mindset change from just going in the front door. And then up into the point of victim removal. And we do the window lifts and stuff like that. We do a couple basic ones because at the end of the day, you can do a ton of stuff, but like we try to cater to the least common denominator, the least experienced person in the class. And so we don't want to get too crazy or too technical with things, because, right, as well as I do, when you get in that stressful situation, pulling your webbing out or pulling this out or this tool or that tool, we just do like the raw, like hands-on, like window lifts, using the legs of fulcrum and stuff like that, lifting the person out, feet out. That's what we get into, the drags, utilizing a lot of different drags, cross leg drags, just limb drags and stuff like that, depending on, the conditions and stuff like that. But we try to give them at least a few head first drags, a few feet first drags, because you can't always reposition. We do teach them repositioning as well, how to reposition a victim. But at the end of the day, you can't always reposition. You don't always have time for that, or the ability or the manpower. So we do teach how to reposition somebody from their face to their back a few different ways, and go from there. That is a lot of what we teach as well, because we found out that that is what a lot of people lack, and you even see it in the class, real victims, all that kind of stuff. You see that they don't utilize a lot of those things because they're just not used to it. You see what people, because even though that you instructed them prior to them doing the scenarios, they're going to fall back on what they know. At the end of the day, unfortunately, that quickly, they're going to fall back on what they know and what they do in their department already. So you can see those deficiencies in a lot of people in a lot of the departments and how they teach things, because it wasn't because we didn't teach them. It's because they just, under that stress or that them being tired, they fall back on it, and they just end up grabbing the person and just dragging them however they can, which at the end of the day is what we're going to do. We're not going to leave somebody in because we couldn't, cross their legs appropriately. We're going to grab them. We're going to yank them out, unfortunately at the end of the day. But we do teach that victim removal as well. Cause you're right. That is something that we kind of get lost in translation of, well, we're teaching how to search. We're searching, but oh shit, how do we get this person out now that we got them, and we talk about finding a secondary means of egress. And that's part of where the officer is more of the setting the pace. The officer is going to find that secondary means of egress, or if you have three people, that third person can go find it. But the firefighter is going to be the one that's doing the grunt work. And that's the way I like to roll with it.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's the thing about search that people need to I think that people need to grasp is the fact that this is very one, it's a lot of communication, but two, it's a lot of forward thinking, right? Like you've always got to be thinking the next step ahead. So like I personally don't count windows or doors or any of that stuff. When I come into a room, I generally just like start my search and do the things. But whenever I leave off that wall to like extend out, the first thing I do when I come back to that wall is hit the wall 3 times, bottom, middle, top. And the reason why I'm doing that is because we can hear, right? So I'll hear changes on the wall. So if it's all the same straight up, I probably know that it's a wall. But like if I hit bottom and I hear thud and then I hit middle and it's a different sound, chances are that's probably a window, right? Yep. Or if all 3 taps are more hollow than the wall that I just hit, I'm probably thinking it's a door, and then I can start sweeping for a knob, right? So it's very quick, efficient things like that speed up your search. But also always thinking like, what am I going to do if I find a victim in here, right? Am I taking them out this window, right? Am I going down, to another room that might be, like I went into this room, it has an open door, but I know like 2 rooms down there was a closed door, right? Or we just searched that room, we vented the window and we closed the door. I might opt to keep their airway low and drag them down the hallway back to that room that I know has been venting this whole time, to put my victims in a better environment, but also give me visibility so that I could see and I can properly package this person and things like that. Like these are things that we have to think about as we're searching of where was I last? What are the conditions where I came from versus where I'm at now? Like all of those, because the worst thing that we can do, right? We're not doing an assessment on people here. So when I find a victim, I'm not like shaking them like, hey, are you breathing? And we all know we're all paramedics, right? So 3 of us know what? Respiratory arrest and then cardiac arrest, right? So, hey, they might be breathing, but they might not be breathing all that well, right? And I just took their airway from down at the ground, and I just took it up here into 300-400 degrees, right? And they might be taking their last breath or something, right? So all those are possibilities. The last thing we want to do is inadvertently, for no apparent reason, just lift them up into the bad shit, because we got a mask on. We're not thinking about that, right?
Yeah.
But to the victim, that's burns, that's all kinds of things, right? So, implementing what we know, what we've been able to prove through studies in our victim removal techniques of like, hey, keep their airway as low as possible, right? Even if the removal process takes 3 times as long, you're going to have a better outcome for that victim by keeping their airway, down at the floor where all the fresh air and stuff is. Now, that's not to say that we won't ever lift them up and out a window, because we do, right? But that goes back to, how are you training, right? So we train like, hey, we're going to come in this room. First thing we're going to do is isolate. We're going to close this door. First window I come across, we're going to open it up, right? We're going to, whether we can open it or we take it out, we're getting that window open, right? So we can start getting lift. One, it improves visibility for your search, but two, it's better for your victim. So what's that?
Well, and that's now you've just created, we do hit on that. Like I said, that's where now you have a safe space. So when you go 2 rooms down, you know that room is now good and you can come back to it. But yeah, obviously now we have to have the caveat of, we tell them open the window if your department, if that's something they allow, because we don't want people going back to their departments, going in a room and opening up every window and, their chief losing their fucking mind. But, that's something we would do. And that's something we do, at Clearwater. If I'm searching, I'm going to open a window in a room or at least crack it. We tell them, we're like, you don't have to open it all the way if it's ripping inside, not in that room, but in the fire's still like ripping, the engine doesn't have water on it. You might not want to open that window up all the way. At least crack it, lift some smoke out, at least low where you're searching. And then by the time you come back to that room, or maybe need to come back to that room, it's vented then, or you open it up the rest of the way.
I mean, that's the importance of saying, hey, don't just believe me, but do some research, because if they do research, they're going to find out that the UL says it, and so does the Governor Island study from New York City. That as long as that door is closed and you're isolated, you can have floor to ceiling combustion on the other side of that door, and that makes no difference on flow path. None. Right? So even if your engine hasn't flowed water yet, you close that door, that bought you at least 20 minutes. You're still in a good spot. You can open that window, nothing's going to change. Yeah. What's that? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what's that?
Yeah. So when you give them that information and you say, hey, I'm not telling you to do this. I'm not telling you to violate your SOPs or anything like that. I'm just telling you like what's going to be better for us and for our victims. Here's the information. Go research it yourself. Formulate your own opinion. That is something that's hard. That's hard to argue with. Like, obviously, some people are like, that's bullshit. We're not going to do it. But you kind of validate your information a little bit when you could say, hey, I've done this, but here's also the sources done by people a lot smarter than me with things that they can study that I can't, because I just got my hands on my eyeballs. They've got all these cool instruments, right? So it's important that we read, right? And that we research this stuff and we figure out how does that apply to our fireground operations, and maybe you'll use it and maybe you won't, but at least having the knowledge, right, that is possible is going to set you up for some sort of success.
Absolutely,
man. So just taking some notes here, man. Tyler, you talked about how people kind of like in the class will default to their base level of training. Any class you do, you're planting seeds, right, for them to go back and hopefully implement this stuff. But it really goes back to, are we training using data-driven concepts and practices, right? Are we actually searching where the victims are? Are we, keeping their airway low because we know through research that this is the most effective way to get them the best chance to survival, right? And things like that. When we're talking about people getting sloppy and just grabbing them any which way they can, that's really where we have to go back to the firehouse. If we want them to have solid technique on the fireground, we have to drill and drill and drill. It's sets and reps, man, over and over and over, and correct poor performance on the drill field, right? Because on the fireground, you're not going to fix that on the fireground. When it's in the fly and their heart rate's 180 and they're, pinging because they're trying to get this person out, that's not the time you're going to fix it. You have to fix it on the drill ground and in the firehouse and in culture and the mindset and the way we search and why we search the way we search, why we move victims the way we move victims. And then when you're on the drill field of really pushing good fundamental skill sets, right? Good fundamental body positions, body mechanics, thinking about how you're moving and why you're moving them that way. That all goes back to, kind of where we started in this conversation of training, right? And it really does, it's the same thing with engine stuff. When we're teaching people line management, people will default to their base level of experience or background when the heart rate gets up. And it's one of those things in training. It's like, hey man, like, I know it sucks. I know it, think about what you're doing. Take a deep breath. Proper positioning, proper body mechanics, right? It may take a little extra work on the front end to instill that, but it'll pay dividends in the back end when you're actually faced with that same scenario on the fire ground. And man, I love the search talk because it is such, it's such an important part of what we do, right? I mean, search and rescue and fire attack are the two things that save the most lives, right? It's the things that the most life-saving thing we do on the fire ground is put the fire out and get people out of that environment, hands down, like plain and simple. And I love the passion for it. I love, the conversation. We should be teaching people good fundamentals when technology fails, right? It's all great. Flashlights, ticks, all this tools and stuff, webbing, that's all cool. But when your heart rate's up and stuff fails, what do you resort to? Do you have good fundamentals built? So I love the fact that you're kind of like focusing on dirty drags, solid search technique, how we're searching and what we're looking at, what we're trying to do, and why we're doing it that way. And then just kind of put it in context and let those people take those concepts back to their fire department and figure out how that fits into their SOGs and their operation. So dude, I love that. I absolutely love the thought behind down and dirty. Like you said, I know that it gets overused in the fire service nowadays, but how we're searching, why we're searching that way, how to implement that in different contexts, i.e., are you searching off a 2-man ambulance? Are you searching off a 4-man truck? And getting that feedback from the students so that you can kind of curtail the program to show people those differences in, because there's a big difference in having 2 people searching and 3 people searching. There's a big difference in, having somebody who searches a lot, but maybe they're on a company where they don't get to search a lot, and trying to take those 2 levels of experience and training and things like that. And departments have little things that they find along the way that work for them, and putting that all together and giving that experience and training, letting people try those new techniques or those, maybe thinking about things that they haven't thought about before, and put it to use in training, so that hopefully they take it back to their department. Hopefully they keep training on it. And again, nobody's going to be a great searcher overnight. It takes sets and reps. You just have to get in gear. You have to put those limiting factors on yourself, the gear, the mask, the, zero visibility, heat, things like that. And the way you do that is you find training opportunities and you go after it. Every single opportunity you get to go search, go do it. Every opportunity that you get to implement something in real life, do it. Seize the opportunities that you do have, because like you said, in some departments, you may only get to do, a handful of fires a year. So you got to maximize those opportunities. And the way you do that is you put lots of time in the drill field, lots of time in the firehouse, so that when you do get those opportunities, that's your time to shine. That's your time to put it all together. But it goes back to discipline. It goes back to discipline and technique, discipline and mindset. And I love the data that's being pumped out in the fire service nowadays, because it helps us to be smarter, right? It validates some of the things that we've been anecdotally, we've kind of figured out through experience. It's a lot of that stuff's being validated with science now and showing, hey, this is why this works. Maybe before we realized it works, but we didn't really understand why exactly it works as good as it does. And now we're able to kind of meld science in the street and put it all together. I love what you guys are doing in the class, man. I think it's a badass class. From what I've heard, the feedback I've personally heard and seen, it seems like you guys are really moving in the right direction. I'm getting people to, really think about how and why they do things, and putting them in situations where it's going to apply to them. What is your operation? What is your background? Who searches the most in your department? What are the most likely scenarios for you? And building the class around the student instead of making the student conform to, well, this is the way we do it. I love the concept, man. So kudos to you guys for taking the time to ask people, what their background is, how they search, things that they've seen and done, and then making the program fit to give them the most bang for their buck, right? When they show up and search, you're going to put them in situations that hopefully are going to be directly relatable to what they're doing in their fire department.
Yeah, and another thing, just a sidebar of the class. A lot of people, what do? We take a couple guys from our department and we go to class together. Well, I like to do a little experiment there, because what do they say? Like a lot of the NIOSH stuff, a lot of the, those kind of fires, like you're once in a career fire, right? It's not going to be with the crew that you've been with for 15 years. It's going to be with a crew that you've never met, you've never seen. It's overtime, or you've been up all night, or fighting with your wife, whatever it is, right? It's not going to be with those guys. So I encourage the people in class. We encourage the people in class. Don't search and don't work with the people that you work with every scenario. Obviously, you can be the same group, cool, get some reps together. but I encourage them to work with people from other departments, talk where your communication's different, your wording's different, right? To still accomplish the same task and to see how much more difficult it is, you know, and to see kind of that, how they overcome those obstacles of maybe not understanding somebody or their accent's different. You know, we're just in Georgia. Accents are a little bit different in Georgia and Alabama than they are in Florida. So putting people from,
Yeah.
you know, the Keys, we had a guy from the Keys searching with a guy from Alabama. Well, there's a big difference there in their how they talk. So it was kind of
Sure.
cool just to put them in those positions that are a little uncomfortable in training and see how they
Yeah.
overcome them, or give them that little bit more stress, added stress, or, you know, added, you know, have to be, you know, conscious in their mind. So that's another thing we like to do with them as well. And that's the why that we do that, because a lot of these once in a career fires, or when you are going to make that grab, or
Yeah.
you're going to have that incident, it's with a crew that you've never worked with, you know. So, and that's studies show that. So.
Yeah, man. No, that's beautifully put. You got to, again, it's adding those layers of stress and training so that hopefully we perform at a higher level in real life. And I love that you bring up the communication thing, because in my city, it's not uncommon for me. You know, I may be downtown on this swing, and next swing I'm farmed out to whatever company that here or there. It's not always with guys that you're super familiar with. Sometimes you're working on a different shift on overtime or swap, or those big fires don't always happen when we're in our prime, well rested, like middle of the day when we're ready to go. Sometimes it's at the end of a long 72 with a company that you haven't barely worked with, right? And that's just real. That's real life in the fire service. So the communication thing is huge, and being able to put yourself in those situations ahead of time, and so that you understand your limitations, understand the things that sometimes when you're in those situations, keep it simple, right? Get back to the basics of, hey, you and I, if we work together all the time and we're partners on the same truck, we may have a system dialed in, but if that doesn't always translate to the guy that I'm working with that I haven't worked with in 8 months, and I'm working with them now for the first time in 8 months, and we're on a different company, a different part of town. And sometimes it just got to go back to simplicity of communication, right? Having good fundamentals in our training, right? In our culture, in our department, so that hopefully we're on the same page of music, speaking the same language, and reverting to good fundamental practices of, like, hey, if all else fails, we still have these basics that we can fall back on, of how we're searching, how we're moving victims, and all those things kind of come together to make a better experience. But that being said, we've been at it for a little over an hour and a half now. It's been a great conversation, man. We are going to hit you with some rapid fire questions now. So are you ready for rapid fire?
Ready.
You're ready. Okay. So I will, I'll start off with 3 questions. Sean will give his 3 questions, and then, we'll wrap her up here. If I can pull my notes up here, because I can't read very well, apparently. Here we go. All right. Okay, I'm in the right page. So, man. So rapid fire, like I said, brief questions, raw answers. Nothing. It doesn't have to be super elaborate. A paragraph is sufficient to answer the question. A sentence, whatever you feel comfortable giving. But we're just gonna hit you rapid. Like I said, one right after the other. And what happens. If we get to the end and we need to, have a moment to come apart and cry for a second, that's cool too. We're all about giving you an opportunity here to to let your feelings out at the end. So here we go, man. Rapid fire question number 1. This is the one I like to lead out with all the time. What's your favorite position on the fire ground?
Tailboard firefighter, Tillerman.
Okay, so default more towards the truck. Yeah. Are you one of those guys that it's 2023? Cool. It's cool, man. If you're an engineman that identifies as a Tillerman, that's cool.
No, I am. Yeah.
Okay. So Tillerman is, I don't have that experience, so I can only imagine how glorious it is riding in the tiller spot. That's very, very cool. Very cool. So glad that you guys get to experience that. I will live vicariously through you in that regard. Question number 2. What's your favorite fire service book?
I'm not much of a reader. I did Pride and Ownership. I think it's a great book, great message, and that's it. Pride and Ownership.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's a good one. All right. Question number 3. Who has had the biggest impact on your career?
I can't really give props to one person. Like I said, early on I was taught very good tradition of the fire service by a lot of people that I worked with, and just passed on the message of keeping that tradition alive. As a new guy and evolving into a company officer, I really can't give one props to one person.
Sure. Do you have like one mentor though that you kind of leaned on
So,
heavily in your career, or somebody who's maybe said some things in those moments, those low, you talk about those low lows. I mean, that's kind of brought you back out of that place and got you right in the, kind of right in your mind, and that frame of mind, get you back focused on the job.
that's it. You got me. You said some of these are going to be easy, some are going to be hard. This is a hard one. I really,
Yeah.
I don't. I just no.
Fair enough. Yeah. No. Sometimes it is a village kind of thing to build us, right? It does take a village to make us who we are. So I'll give you a pass on that. We'll make it up. We'll make it up later. After we're done recording. It may involve your mustache. I don't know. But that's all I got. That's my 3, man. See, not that bad. Not that bad. It only hurt a little.
Yeah, the last one hurt because I feel like I should have one, but I just don't.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, but you know what, Tyler? Here's what I'm going to tell you. It's okay not to have just one. That means that you have many people in your career that have invested in you, which is you're a very fortunate person to have that, because not everyone does. So, no shame in that answer, buddy. So I got 3 for you. They're a little bit easier, I feel. So number 1 being, obviously we've talked about this a little bit today. You're a new company officer. What inspired you to want to step into that role? Because as we know in the fire service, some people deserve that role. Some people step into that role and they're not so good at it. And they just take it for whatever reason they do. So in your realm of things, what made you want to be a company officer?
First things first, like I said, and like you said, there's some officers that are really good, some that are really bad. You can learn a lot from both. I aspired to be one just to be able to control the little circle that I have. And I use the word control. I shouldn't use that word. I don't like it. But influence change in a department. The people who just respect the position, I can get to those people. The people who respect me as a firefighter and as a person and who I am and what I've done, I can influence those people. And then in addition, just whoever falls under in my company or in my firehouse that I work in, to be able to just influence that little bit of change, the passion, having somebody that, is quote unquote in a leadership position that has passion for the job. I think it's a very good quality to have, not just for myself, but the officers that I've, had throughout my career that are really passionate. It goes a long way. So, just to be able to influence change in my own department and kind of influence that circle that I have, and just expand my knowledge and career.
Awesome. Yeah, no, fair enough. So we also know that you like to train, as most of us here on this thing. So if you had to pick a favorite training drill to do with either by yourself or with your crew, what would that drill be?
Honestly, right now, my favorite drill is just a simple, let's pull a line. Let's do a quick search off the hose line, because if you're getting a hose line deep into a structure, that's possibly going to be where the victims are, right? Kind of combining both, because like we said, it's 2023 in the fire service. We have trucks that operate like engines and engines that operate like trucks, depending on the way the wind blows. But I like to do just a quick little drill of pulling a line. Let's go in. Let's do a search off the line, clear a couple rooms, knock the fire down, and come back out. Just a simple bread and butter stuff, because at the end of the day, we do all these crazy trainings and all this crazy stuff out there, but we forget to go back to the basics sometimes. Like I said, we would just search, just searching without all those tools, feeling what it feels like to pull a line again, to flow water, to, search off the hose line real quick and just, knock out a room or two while the truck's coming in. I like to just knock a quick drill out like that. Quick, easy, get some fuel, go to the training center, pull a line, do that quick search, and go back to the firehouse.
There you go. Yeah, it's all about those fundamentals, right? Like knocking the rust off, making sure you're sharp and ready to go. So that's I would say that's a drill that I would like to do too. Being big on search, so and you can never go wrong stretching line. So
Nope.
last one for you is I know Nick kind of hit you with it a little bit, but I'm going to take it a step further. Why do you feel it's important to have mentors in the fire service?
So when real quick, I'll make this quick as possible because that's a loaded question. I can go a long time on that. But when I got in the fire service, I started when I was 19 years old. So I live with my parents still. The fire service taught me everything I pretty much know, even in regular life, how to do laundry, make coffee, all that kind of stuff. Learned how to cook a lot of things in the firehouse. So having those mentors to just show me what tradition is in the fire service. Hey, this is what a good cook does. This is what a good tailboard does. This is what a good new guy does. This is what the trucks do. Having all these different mentors, like that's why it's such a hard question, because I've had people lead me, to do things on an engine that I wouldn't normally do, or do things on a truck I wouldn't normally do, or just in the firehouse and as a person. So having mentors in the fire service is basically, to me, it allows us to continue to have the tradition in the fire service that we are kind of going away from, in a sense. And having those people that have learned from people that are kind of old school, or learned from people with a trade or whatever, and just pass on that brotherhood of like making the fire service better than the way you found it. I think it's great to have mentors and not just one sometimes.
Yeah, no. I mean, hey, the good thing about these questions is it's all about your, how you feel about it. So here's the one thing I'll say about mentors, because I've been blessed. I have many of them over the years, and I have learned that, that word mentor in the fire service doesn't just translate to our job. If you have a person that's truly a mentor of yours that actually truly cares about you and your family, man, they will teach you so much about life. Like you said, like you're living with your parents, you learn how to do like a lot of things. Those are just as important of things to get from a mentor as anything you're going to learn on the job. Because at the end of the day, the job is the job, and we still have personal lives, and we have our own struggles in those. Everybody does, whether it be in a relationship or, maybe with things you've seen, or that you're trying to, get through, whether it be something from the job or just something in your personal life. So having those people to lean on that can kind of give you their life experiences and steer you in a good direction, you just can't replace that, and I say it often, the brotherhood, sisterhood, all that stuff, it's very real. And if you don't have it, you've never experienced it, I feel bad for you, because it's out there. Maybe you're just in the wrong circle, because there's been moments in my personal life where I'm just going through some big changes, and I'll call somebody like Nick or some other people that I can fall back on. And if I didn't have those people to call and they didn't give me some direction, I might have probably made some different decisions, and I don't know how that would have worked out, so mentors go a long way, and I just want to tell people, like, don't just always focus on the job 24/7 when it comes to that, because there's so much more to it, and you never know whose life you're going to impact. Especially now when we see the suicide rates just skyrocketing and things like that, man, just take the time, love each other, just get to know each other on a personal level, and just help each other out, man. That's it.
Sounds good. I got one more thing real quick. I just want to say it's a quote that I came up with, because a lot of people ask, when do you know if you're ready to be an officer, or when do you know when it's ready to make the next step to drive, or whatever it might be, right? My thing is, you got to have a subconscious skill set and a conscious mindset. You got to be able to watch people do things, maybe not the way that you do them, and still, basically understand if it's going to be efficient or effective, and continue to do your job. And that's just something I strive to do in training. So
yeah, no, I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah, well put, man. So that's the end of the rapid fire questions. I will say this, man, real quick on the mentor thing. I love that Sean, you brought up the personal side of things, and Tyler, you hit on it too. Is mentors, they're great. They're people that are sounding boards for us. They're people who teach us so much more. It's more than just being a good firefighter. It's being a good person, being a good human. And that's what, talk about mentors, man. Like there's so many people I can think of in my career, in my life that have made me and pushed me to be better, not just in the job, but better in life in general, better in my relationship with my wife, better as a parent with my kids, just a better human being. And I think that's the beauty of it, man, is having people from all these different areas that you can have those sounding boards from, like I said, whether it's tactics and strategies, search, engine ops, whatever, that's great. But then the same, the people that hey, how's your wife? How's your kids? Hey, I noticed you've just been kind of down lately. Is everything all right? And touching base and having that personal connection. And that's what separates to me. Like if you look at a coach and a mentor, mentors go beyond just the skill set, beyond just the game, if you will. They go to the personal side of things and are investing in the person as a whole. And that's really the difference. Anybody, you can learn to coach and teach skills and knowledge. That's great. But it takes a whole other skill set, I think, to invest in people personally. And really what it takes is giving a shit, caring, loving each other and investing in people. Because if you do that, that's kind of goes back to that iron sharpens iron thing, right? We keep each other accountable. We keep each other engaged. We keep each other, we lift each other up when we're down. That's the whole thing about the brotherhood and why we need each other. This is a team sport. This is absolutely a team sport. We have to have each other, and no one person is individually great enough to do it on their own, right? We have to have other people giving us values and giving us support and giving us feedback. And sometimes that feedback hurts, right? Sometimes that feedback isn't comfortable, but it's what we need to hear out of love. And coming from a place of love, it's a lot better received. And I think that's the thing I wanted to say on mentorship, man. Tyler, it's been a great conversation today. Really had a good time with it. Really feel like we hit some good points, had some really good interactions here. Hopefully everybody listened, took some nuggets away from this. And if anything else, leaves listening to this episode pumped up and engaged in wanting to train more, to be better, to push others to be better, tactfully, obviously. But to make their departments better, to make the fire service better, leave it better. We always use that expression, leave it better than you found it. But what that takes is consistency in training, in purpose, drilling with intent, intently focusing on our people and their needs and meeting those needs and trying to build that team cohesion. And again, it goes back to good fundamentals, on the drill field, in the firehouse, just learning people skills to reach those people, get them engaged, get them to buy in to what we're trying to do. That's what it takes. So that being said, I'll leave it to you, man. If you got anything else you want to say, by all means, throw it out there, brother.
If anybody needs anything, hit me on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And feel free to shoot questions, bullshit, whatever.
Yeah. Sean, you got anything else, brother?
No, man, it's been a great conversation. The only thing I want to say is, like, when we talk and we do these things, I don't want people to take things the wrong way. So if you have any questions or you need clarification on something, maybe something we said just didn't kind of sit right or whatever, please let us know. Just reach out. It's not a big deal. And like I said, we certainly don't have to agree. That's fine. But I love a good conversation. Hell, you might change my mind on something. So, this is just as much anybody else's as it is ours. So, hey, feel free to contact me or Nick or Tyler or whoever, and we'll be happy to talk to you.
Absolutely.
That's it, man. Well put. Well, for all you listening out there, thank you for making it to the end of the episode. Keep grinding, keep training hard. And I just want to say this in closing. Firefighter Muller up there in South Carolina, Irmo fire, just recently had that line of duty death with the collapse. Anybody who knew the guy was ate up with the job, passionate about training, passionate about giving back to the fire service. And so I just wanted to kind of dedicate this episode to, James Muller up there. Jay, this is for you, brother. I know you're looking down on us and smiling that guys are pushing to make the fire service better. That's what you would want, is for us to keep training, to keep doing the job with passion and love in our hearts. So this is for Firefighter Mueller. Like I said, Irmo Fire, you guys are in our thoughts and prayers. This episode is absolutely dedicated to you guys. And that being said, like I said, keep training hard, guys. Keep loving the job. Keep being into it. Life is short. Invest in your people. Invest in your relationships, in your homes. Just be better people, right? Love every minute of this awesome job we get to be a part of. Don't take it for granted, because we just never know when our number is going to get called. So that being said, in closing, thank you guys for the great conversation today. Thank you, Tyler, for taking a couple hours to be with us today to share your love and passion. Love what you got going down there in Clearwater, man. I love seeing all the training you're doing. Keep doing it, man. Keep pushing, because I can tell you right now that we need more guys just like you.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. Have a great afternoon.